Mihira, welcome to Run with Fitpage. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. We've had some really good conversation before we've begun this.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited for what's in.
Yeah, no, the background conversations are always interesting, and we'll make this even more interesting, I think.
Yes.
How about we start with your introduction of where you come from, and I know why are we here, and I'll make sure we stay on the course. But let's talk about what you do currently and where do you come from.
So, like I was telling you, I've been a swimmer, right?
Yeah.
And I swam until 2010-ish. I was a national swimmer, and I always knew I would give back to my sporting fraternity in some or the other way, because I, as a swimmer, didn't have any other support. My parents, my mom was my psychologist, nutritionist. हम competitions में जाते थे और वो एक दूसरे के यहाँ देखते थे कि ये रेस के पहले क्या खा रहा है, ये क्या खा रही है.
Yeah.
And then those were the tips
Yeah.
we had, as
Yeah.
you know, what do you do? My dad used to watch Arnold a lot. तो मुझे एग नॉग भी पिलाया है, कच्चे अंडे भी मैंने खाए हैं, सब कुछ करा है. सो आई थिंक फ्रॉम दैट जर्नी आई लर्न दैट वी डिडंट हैव एनी सपोर्ट. However, we still made it to some place. But I think if we had enough support, could we have gone to another level?
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's where my thought process was. I did my bachelor's in dietetics and master's in sports nutrition, did a few more courses. And today I work as the Lead Sports Nutritionist at Advancement Foundation, and through which we work with a lot of different federations, and we work with different athletes from athletics, from weightlifting, from badminton, swimming, all of these guys, and work very closely on their nutrition and supplement requirements. And like I said, like I was telling you about periodizing them, I think that's one area that I'm very much passionate about and interested in, because I feel like if the training is different, then your nutrition should be different. So that's the impact I'm trying to bring in my little way with the athletes I meet.
Super good. And we'll get to periodization in a bit, because that is pretty relevant to our conversation. Our target group, primarily our listeners, are long distance runners. Some are fairly fast and some are good. Some enjoy. And one thing that's been common is we want to be better.
Yeah.
We want to be improving from wherever we are. And one of the interventions we want to look at is optimizing our nutrition. And I thought we'll talk about that today.
Yeah.
From a long distance running point of view, how nutrition can be different, how sports nutrition can be different than normal nutrition. So how about we start from the very basic? What is nutrition, and is it supposed to be different when you are running, training, versus when you're living a normal life?
To start with, what is nutrition? I think anything we eat should nourish us. Simply put,
Yeah.
you know, the food on the table should nourish us. And whether you're a sedentary individual or whether you're somebody suffering from any clinical situation, or you're a sports enthusiast or an elite, athlete, I think nutrition can be different things for you, because you're at different stages of life performance, as we'd call it. If you're a sedentary individual, nutrition is still very important, because you need it for the basic mechanisms of your cells, your organs, your metabolism, all of that. And I think we are, again, I'm not sure about the facts, but we are leading towards becoming the #1 country in terms of obesity, right, in the world. So I think so much importance to health has not been given, and nutrition is one thing that's universal, right? That's one thing that we all can control. We can control what we eat. And if that is one place where we can make some changes, I think it can impact a lot in terms of body composition, help reduce body fat percentage. That will further reduce a lot of inflammation and keep us away from all the diseases that are as a result of obesity. So that's one message I'd like to give people who are watching, in terms of sedentary individuals wanting to make change in their health. I think clinical population group is a group that requires special nutrition strategies if you are suffering from an underlying clinical condition. So if you have some issues with respect to renal issues, kidney issues, diabetic individuals, hypertensive individuals undergone cardiac issues, for all those cases, you'll have a very specific nutrition strategy that you'll follow, so that you not just recover from that condition, you also prevent it from aggravating in the future. So that's for clinical side of things. The other aspect, like you said, is the sports nutrition population group. sports in itself is so dynamic, right? We call it sports, but there are so many different sports. And I know that we're talking about long distance running, but just to highlight that the energy systems, the exercise physiology, the way your systems react with the exposure of different trainings will trigger a lot of changes in terms of what fuel you use. So as a long distance runner, I think the reliance on stored carbohydrates and stored fats as triglycerides is humongous, right? The longer you run, the more reliance on fats increases. So what your nutrition strategy should be, because you're in an aerobic energy system, you need oxygen, you need to have better aerobic capacity, you need to ensure that you have a carbohydrate source of fuel constantly, ensuring that your paces are kept at. So all of these things become important, but only after I understand the sport, only after I understand the training requirement, and I understand at which level you're starting your sport. You can be somebody who's just running as an enthusiast. You can be somebody who's competing at a very high level. You are somebody who's in between. You are competing at various international level marathon races, and you are extremely well learned, and you want to find out strategies that help push the barrier and help you improve your performance. So a lot of these factors play an important role in deciding what nutrition strategy works for you. And just to sort of extend that a little bit, what age you are, gender specific requirements are different. Your anthropometric and body composition measurements, like I touched upon, how much body fat do you have? Because if you have excess, then you're carrying dead weight to run. What's your muscle composition? What is your current training demands? What is your current training routine? What marathon are you planning? How many months do we have? What sort of supplements are you using? So all of these things need to really be taken into account before we consider the sports nutrition aspect and side of things. Sorry if that was too long.
No, that was not. And it is leading to where we are going. And so it makes absolute sense. I also like the fact that you said the nutrition should and must nourish you. It is the primary reason that we consume nutrients is for us to be nourished, and in a very holistic way, right? We should not only feel full, not that that our body is giving signal that you're full, but rather we should be, for us to live healthy and better, we need to be very well nourished. What happens is, and primarily RTG that listens to this podcast, is they come from possibly a background where they've been sedentary at some point or most of their lives. At some point, they realized that now either the middle age is hitting or they need to get started to take some weight off. From there it starts, and very quickly it becomes a habit for them to aspire to become a marathoner and longer distances, for example. But in the process, what happens, the sufficiency of nutrition that should have been even when they were sedentary was not met, and now the gap starts to become bigger because you start to perform and you start to stress your body even more, and you think that just because you're running, magically everything is going to turn positive and everything that you eat is going to be digested the way it should be, and things like those. And I think we should spend some time there before we come to the point of periodization, like getting to the baseline. That's the right baseline before they even get to do anything else is extremely important in my opinion. And I wanted your help to understand, suppose someone is getting on a training protocol for several months, for example, and they want to make sure that at least they are in sufficiency at that stage. What are some of the things they should keep in mind from nutrition point of view? I have seen questions and issues coming that I think just with some common knowledge could have been avoided, right? At times I find people being vitamin D3 deficient, but they are actually supplementing themselves with calcium because they think they have
it has vitamin D.
Yes, so a lot of these things are coming up.
Correct.
I think we should try to myth bust some of these. What should be some of the things for them to consider to get to the baseline before we talk more about their performances?
Correct. So like you rightly said, get tested. That's the best way to begin with.
Right.
Matlab, what's happening inside, we don't know.
True.
So best thing is to get tested. And I say get tested in 5 ways. The first way is anthropometry. look how much you weigh first. And not from the perspective of, I know that we've grown from the fact that weight is not the only indicator of obesity and all of that. It's body composition. But for an athlete, weight is still significant, because even if you're somebody with higher muscle mass, low body fat, and you're a long distance runner, that may still not always work for you, because you're still carrying extra weight and spending extra energy. So weight is important to just check where you are. Body composition. So if you have an access to a really good gym that has various body composition machines called as BIA, bioelectrical impedance analysis, get on them, stand on it, and just get a report of how much body fat, muscle, etc. you have. If you don't have that, and if you have some money to invest, go to any hospital and they'll usually have something called as a DEXA scan, which is considered to be the gold standard in body composition analysis. It is expensive. I think between 2,000 to 3,000 rupees is what it costs. But twice a year is something that you can look at making this investment if you can. If not, the BIA machines available in gyms can cost you between 500 rupees if you're not a member. If you're a member, it's free of cost. So these two things. So get tested on that. So we'll know exactly हम कितना excess body fat we are carrying. So we know how much we want to drop, and we can make some goals based on it. The third thing is get your blood checks. So there are various parameters you can get yourself checked with. And as an annual checkup, if you're in the middle age group and you want to start running, I think any which ways annually you should get all your panels checked. So you know where we are and what intervention you're making, if it's making any difference. Because I see a lot of people randomly getting a blood test for vitamin D, come aa jata hai, then they supplement and then they forget about it. Then they don't recheck to see whether it worked, it didn't work. And then next time they check, it is still low. So you don't know what strategy worked only for you. So I think get your bloods checked, but do it periodically. Annually is decent for now. But if when you did your blood test and you realize that you're deficient on D, B12, whatever, and then you can decide that after about 1 quarter, I'm going to test just these two things to see ki whatever intervention I planned, has it made a difference or not. So that's very important. You can do different tests from CBCs to ESR to a liver profile, kidney profile, thyroid profile. All of this can become one diabetes profile as one panel. But endurance specific tests that I think you must do would be things like your vitamin D, vitamin B12, folic acid, and iron studies, ferritin. So these 5 things I would include as a panel, apart from the basic health checkup that you do anyway. Because these are very direct markers of endurance performance, right? If you're deficient in these things, because some or the other way they make your RBCs, and then they make your hemoglobin, and that defines your oxygen carrying capacity. But if you're deficient in all of this and you're training very hard, you're clearly not making the most of what your body can do. So get these checked for sure, and get it checked every quarter, if not at least every 6 months. So you know, especially if you're a proper hardcore marathoner, then at least quarter or 6 months up kar lo. So you know whether you're in that sufficiency range. The other thing I'd like to highlight is that our goal now is to not be deficient. Our goal is not being optimally sufficient, right? So I think we need to change our focus, because that changes the narrative only. We want to look at optimum performance. We don't want to look at preventing a deficiency, right? So when you look at that, then you're in the game of performance. So I think these 5 things are very, very important to do. And after that is done,
just there, sorry to cut you off, because this is so important. One is the point where you said being not being avoiding deficiency, but rather be optimally sufficient is more important. Like, for example, B12, if you are at 230, 300 is not something that even though you're not going to be getting that bold mark in the numbers, still you want to be at the higher end. So, and you want to be meeting a qualified nutritionist who suggests that. Now at the for the test, should we just go through just in 30 seconds to say what are the panels and the test just once more for people to understand what I took away? People should start with basic CBC. Then of course, I also think that they should look at their cardiac profile, of course. From their kidney will make sense. diabetes type 2 for sure, liver.
Even
Electrolytes, yes.
become important. Maybe not at like baseline, but now when you start competing, you'll start realizing that, especially after, like I've had episodes, I've had consultations with people who've finished a marathon, the Mumbai marathon, stay very far. So they took a train from CST and then they went back home to Dombivli or something. And then during the train journey, this person fainted.
Wow.
And then with the help of other people in the train, it's Sunday, right? So Sunday block bhi hota hai. So not many people, but took this person to the hospital, got the panel tested, and then electrolytes were very low. Sodium especially was very, very low.
Right.
So classic case of hyponatremia, as we call it, very low sodium levels. When I took his history, I realized that the only was on water.
Wow.
Didn't take any electrolytes. And then after the race was done, everybody was celebrating. So he had that 500 ml ka Coke on top of it. So, these things, you don't realize it only. But then it sort of comes up into like a fainting episode and then gets you in the hospital. And what it was, low sodium.
Wow. People, again, here the success metric that they look at is that they need to get to the finish line, but they rather need to look at getting to the finish line safely and
healthy.
Be healthy. It's so important. And this is such a typical case I see almost all the time. They think if they are running at best, they should be supplementing with water. And if they're doing it, they're doing a favor on their bodies, to be honest. The sweat, let alone be thinking about sweat rate and things like those. It's at times people start to even talk about that, hey, I did a long run, I did not consume anything and I feel good about it. That's not the way to, of course, go. But I was at the tests.
Yes. Do you want me to list them down?
Yes, please. That will be super good.
So I think we start with CBC. You do an ESR. You do the lipid profile. You do the kidney profile. You do the liver profile. You do the thyroid panel if you have a history somewhere.
Sure.
Then you look at all your vitamins and minerals. So that's where you can, in renal profile, calcium will come. So in the vitamin profile, you'll do vitamin D, you'll do B12, you do folic acid. Iron is very important as a mineral.
Calcium.
So calcium will come in renal profile.
Perfect.
You'll do iron studies and you'll do ferritin, which will tell you the storage of iron as such. And if you're really the geek trying to figure out where my performance is, why am I not recovering, then you can do other things, which is morning cortisol. You can do total and free testosterone. You can do creatine phosphokinase to see the level of recovery, all of that. So you can top them up with this.
Sure.
Now, like we were discussing, you should know how to interpret them as well and take the right guidance on what to do from here on. Right? You get all of the tests done. Just another example is some of the athletes we work with, you'll see that they'll have high CPK levels. And many doctors or people might just look at it and panic and say that, oh, very high CPK levels. But it's very common for them as athletes because they train at that level of intensity. And these levels also fluctuate. Sometimes you take after 24 hours, 48 hours. That much time it takes for your body to recover. So you'll find that certain inflammatory markers are still roaming around.
True.
Right? So it's very important to interpret all of this also correctly and have some strategies that align with those results without over interpreting them or under interpreting them. So I think consulting a qualified sports nutritionist and sports physician becomes very important in this scenario.
Got it. No, I think this one is very important that they need to interpret it right. Don't be a master by Googling it. It's not going to help. And also go to the qualified sports nutrition. It's something that you continue to emphasize. And I want to as well that if you just want to go to the nearest nutritionist may not be the right way, but rather look for someone that adds relevance to it. One other thing I would want to add that is not live in denial. If there are markers that are off, try to address them, because by you denying it, by you saying that, hey, it may be one-off case is not going to help, specifically if you want to work on optimizing your performances. Correct. Isn't it?
100%. I think your health is in your hands.
Yeah.
So I always say this to my younger athletes who consult me. I tell them that I can tell you what to do, but now I cannot put the morsel in your mouth, and that also I'll try and do. But then you have to chew it and you have to have it. So I think that there's a swing in the difference in population groups. Like I have a group of people who are very dedicated, who do what it takes, who are very conscious of what's happening. They care about their health and body too much. And there's other group of people who are like, dekha jayega. I want to run, I'm enjoying, I feel great about it, I will do it. But I feel like now is really the time, like generally now is the time to take care of your health, because that really COVID taught us this. That is really your wealth, right? And money will come, money will go. Health, if it goes, it goes. You know, it's difficult to sort of repair and come back without the right intervention. So I feel health hai to sab hai. If you talk about running, performance, all of that, but if your basic health is not in the correct, you know, position and correct situation, then that performance meeting is very difficult. And everything, of course, I'm a nutritionist, so I'll give you nutrition guidelines. But everything is behavior. Everything is belief. So if you believe in the fact that I can clock this time in my marathon, and you'll automatically be focused on the nutrition strategy that is going to work for you. So I already say it in the present tense. It will work for you if you believe in it, and if you trial and error, figure out what works, and then believe in that strategy. I think if you do that, there's no stopping you.
Awesome.
So a lot of behavioral change and mind and everything is involved in it.
Sure. No, that sets the right base for us to move forward, which I'm very excited about. You know, you believe in it when you know of it, and you believe in it when you know more about it. How do you do things, right? And knowledge is the biggest confidence booster, and such is the case in performances as well. We find coaches easily, and also I'll be honest, it's easier to coach. But it is more difficult to be able to get right nutrition interventions.
Correct.
It even becomes more important to keep certain contraindications, limitations in mind when you're performing, and you want everything to be optimum. Also because, remember backstage we were talking about our bodies are amazing, but not necessarily you know everything about it, right? So now when the person starts, the person has this hope that they are going to turn up every day, they are going to be consistent, they are going to be hitting all the paces that are required to be for a long period of time, and come the Berlin Marathon or any other, you're going to get your PR. But here comes your immunity is compromised, your HRV goes down, you see number of markers are off, and you start to see you're either overtrained, your nutrition is not right, you're not sleeping well, etc. When we think from nutrition point of view, as you get on to your marathon journey, how do you periodize your nutrition? And I'm talking also from the point that much similar to when you coach, you start to first look at building base. As you build the base, then you start to bring power and speed. You start to look at peaking thereafter, which you want to sustain, and then taper, and then you turn up to the race, and then you recover, right? I know for sure it's very similar in nutrition, and a lot more complicated, of course. I wanted to go through that journey with you. How do you think one should approach their marathon journey at different period scales, and what should be their nutrition strategies? And we can pick up one by one, and of course I'll have more questions as we progress.
Perfect. I think you built this foundation really well when you sort of said that you want to build the base. Then you work on speed and strength. Then you sort of are in a phase, or you're first doing mileages, then you're doing speed, strength, and then you're doing taper, and then that's your race. So I think if you just take these blocks, your nutrition goals should also be aligning with these blocks, right? So you periodize based on which race you want to run and which race you want to peak. So if you take the example of September, where Berlin's happening, and if some of the listeners are going for it, there's very little time left. But if you look at 20 weeks or 4 months or 5 months that you have with you, the 5th month, so you start backwards, right? So 5th month is where I want to start working on my body composition. I want to start getting my blood test done and see where I'm at. So I'm 5 months away from my marathon. The first thing I want to do is take care of my body composition and blood work.
Yeah.
That allows me 4 weeks, 8 weeks to sort of work a little bit on those parameters, get my hemoglobin up, get my iron stores up, get my B12 up, all of these things, so that I don't land up on a compromised immunity.
Yeah.
So my strategy is always preventative than treatment.
Yeah.
Right? You don't wait to become deficient and then you supplement. You take care of it beforehand. How do you do that? By constantly checking where you are.
Yeah.
And before you start anything, you first check.
Yeah.
So like we discussed, you check where you are, and based on that you will have to do certain interventions. Maybe it's dropping a little bit of body fat percentage. Most of the runners, especially middle-aged runners who come to me, are in the range of 20 to 25% men. Women are 25 to 30%, right? But
in terms of fat percentage.
in terms of fat percentage. But the very practical goal that you can look at having is at least come sub 20.
Yeah.
Because this population group they're not hardcore athletes alone.
Yeah.
They have a job to take care of, they have family to take care of, right? So it's a lot of pressure. So you can't expect to be 5 and 6% like a top marathoner would be.
Yeah.
But at least sub 20, being between the range of 15 to 20% are good targets to have to work towards.
Sure.
The more time you have, the more you can work on these targets. The less time you have, the smaller goals you have. But we work on it during this phase. Then when your mileages start increasing up, this is the phase where your body is wanting to adapt to those mileages. And lot of strategies we can use here, especially training the gut, right? Longer runs, your body is hungry, but your gut is dry, you don't know what to add to it, and you're worried that you'll have to use the washroom, and you're very worried on what to eat, what not to eat. And with everybody the case is that you will feel bloated, you will feel uncomfortable when you try any new item. But that's the whole process of training your digestive system, right? So the initial phases, especially in your longer runs, you'd want to try something which is a little heavier than what you normally do. Of course, we have sports drinks, we have gels. Today we have a lot of things available. But if you're doing a comrade, sif gel will not work. If you're doing a triathlon, sif gel will not work.
Correct.
You will need something else to come in. So there's so many things have come up. There's a dry fruit block. People have salted dates.
The
People
chewies,
have all chewies, everything you try.
Yeah.
But this is important that you start trying in your long runs. See what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And then only then when you're confident ki I'm going to do gels and I'm going to do salted dates, that's my strategy. Or no gels stick on my throat, I'd feel very uncomfortable, I'm going to keep that dates block or dry fruit block with me, and that's what I'm going to do, and maybe one gel I will eat. So this needs to happen as a trial and error permutation combination thing, because everybody is different.
Sure.
Every run is different,
Yeah.
and what happens on those runs you cannot predict.
Yeah,
but you have a framework.
Yeah.
Ki this is what works for me. So when you increase your mileages, that's what you focus on.
Sure.
As you go further with a little bit, sorry, yes.
Just I have a question. Just going a step back, where you said you should try to be in sub 20 range from a fat percentage point of view. Between 15 and 20 is almost a sweet spot for most people who do not have running as a first life, for example. Now, for you to be there, of course, there are training strategies where we suggest you should try to look at being in the so-called fat burning zone, 60 to 75% of your MHR, and that helps you metabolize your fat because of oxygen availability in your bloodstream, and you are able to use fat as an energy source. Not quite as efficient as carbohydrates, still it works.
Yes.
Now, from a nutrition point of view, at this stage, what would you suggest could be some of the strategies? Should it be fasted workout? Should it be something else? Should it be maybe high protein or something like that? What do you suggest? I have some answers in my mind, but I want to hear from you.
Yes. So I think body composition perspective, yes. But also in terms of training strategies, what I could use, I'll try and combine those answers.
Sure, yeah.
So like I said, every training session is different. So the strategy you use for those training sessions can also be very different. And that can sort of align with your body composition goals. One of the classic things is training fasted, right? I would personally use training fasted more as a training strategy than just a body composition improving ka strategy, because when you train fasted, especially max 15 kilometers sort of runs,
Yeah.
or if you're even doing a little bit of hill run, tempo runs, I know that you need carb as a source of fuel, but if you're in the phase of making body composition changes, if you
Yeah.
try and train fasted during that phase, you fasted all night long. So
Yeah.
clearly your body is wanting to use fat as a source of energy. Now you put this body to run a 15 kilometer, which is an aerobic activity.
Yeah.
So the message you're sort of delivering to your body is that I want to use fat as a source of energy. I want to mobilize fat as a source of energy. The minute you give it carbs,
Yeah.
then your body is confused, and body prefers carbs.
Carbs.
Quick, easy to absorb, convenient, all of that. So over fat, it will prefer carbs as a source of energy. So every time you're doing a long run, anything that's aerobic in nature, try and train fasted. So automatically your training objective, which is improving aerobic capacity, aligns with fat being used as a source of fuel. And that way, eventually with training, even at slightly higher intensities, your body will still try and use fat as a source of energy. Of course, this is a training adaptation scenario. So that's one thing. Many people train high, train low, which means that if I have a hardcore VO2 max session, let me train high with carbs.
Yeah.
Right? If I have a long run, let me train fasted.
Yeah.
People will try and train the gut.
Yeah.
So 30 grams carbs they will try per hour. For 60 grams they'll try. 90 grams they'll try. Like I know Eliud Kipchoge's entire sub-2 marathon, the way they planned their nutrition strategy, he was at 90 grams carbs, which is quite heavy, na?
And very difficult to be able to consume and sustain for 2 hours.
For 2 hours.
Yeah.
Those 90 grams are very, very heavy to have. But of course, he was using a gel that has that was built to have this hydrogel sort of
Mortin,
technology, Mortin.
Yeah.
And that sort of made it a little easy for him to sort of digest versus the classic gels that are available in the market today.
Right.
So you can use various strategies, to sort of adapt. Body composition related stuff, you might have to use training fasted. And of course, you can throw in, let's say, an L-carnitine as a supplement, for example. So not just the fact that fat loss is a small effect that it can give, but the fact that it can help mobilize more fat cells into giving energy. So carnitine acts like a gatekeeper.
Yeah.
So without carnitine, with carnitine. Without carnitine, very arbitrary. Let's say you take 10 fat molecules and they're burnt into energy. With carnitine, you probably have access to more of those going in at the same time and giving you more energy. So you can use that as a strategy as well.
Where should be this intervention before the training? At what stage? Like how many minutes before, etc.?
So around 15-20 minutes before, 1000 mg of L-carnitine is more than enough.
Okay.
But you need to be training fasted.
Yeah.
Right? If you take a banana and you have carnitine, no point.
Yeah.
Right? You can throw in an espresso.
Yeah.
So put in a black coffee and put in your L-carnitine, train fasted.
Yeah.
Classic strategy for fat mobilization, especially on your long runs.
Yeah.
When you want to train your body to be more aerobic and use fat more as a source of fuel. Body composition के लिए ये सारा काम करेगा, but at the same time, obviously increasing a lot of fiber intake, protein intake, which is equally important. Fiber intake we'll obviously avoid before your Sunday runs because we don't want the tummy to be upset. But on all other days, the thermogenic effect that fiber brings to the table is good for body composition changes, as well as ensuring that there's some form of protein in every meal. And I feel that most runners don't consider only protein important, right? They know carbs is important for fuel, but not as much as protein. Right? But I feel that is really the key towards recovery, immunity, all of that. So your protein requirement may not be that much. Maybe it is 1.2 grams per kg body weight per day. Like for a 50 kilogram, it might be approximately 60 grams, 65 grams. But the point is that you have some good quality protein in every meal. So that 65 grams, you break it down into 3-4 meals and have. So there's a continuous supply of amino acids all throughout. ये ऐसे peaks or crevices नहीं हो रहे हैं. There's continued supply of amino acids, which will ensure recovery more than anything else.
Sure. You talked about caffeine and these are interesting nuggets that keep coming. Sorry, I'll keep asking questions and we'll digress, but relevant to this conversation. Also, caffeine has diuretic properties, so it makes a lot of sense for you to consume caffeine in the morning. But I also think it should not be done almost every day, right? There is no need, because at some point I've seen your body starts to get used to it.
Yes. So you'd, like I said, we discussed nutrition strategies for different blocks.
Right.
But your nutrition strategy on an everyday basis also should be different.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I would do an espresso carnitine in training fasted in my long run based on how comfortable I am, 15 kilometer, 20 kilometer.
Right.
And then maybe now I start needing fuel.
Yeah.
But that's the place I will use it.
True.
Maybe I'm doing continued pace runs. That's the place I will try and use this strategy.
Sure.
But let's say if I'm doing a hill run, tempo run, VO2 max, a strength session, it's not required because just use it for, I mean, it's important to know why you're using it, right?
Yeah.
If you're using for fat mobilization, perfect. But if you're looking at just, I want my coffee and I'm getting up, I want my coffee to get, through the day. Can you avoid it? Try to do it, because I generally also am a believer that first thing, don't have coffee.
Yeah.
For that benefit, okay, we're trying to use it for something else. But generally when you get up, anyways, you want to make it more alkaline. Don't put that black coffee in there.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So my suggestion is, don't try and do something on an everyday basis where the beauty of that benefit sort of goes away. Yeah. Because you will get adapted.
Yeah.
Now, I know so many people who can have an espresso and sleep.
Me.
Yeah, and I am somebody who, like I was telling you, I don't drink tea, I don't drink coffee. So probably if I had espresso now, I would be like, hi, I would be jumping around. So I feel that you get adapted to it.
Sure.
So use it only when you need it.
No, makes absolute sense. You talked about as we progress with mileage and as you start to train your gut, this is one phase that's so important, because especially in marathon, if you have not trained your gut and you're going to try something new, you are in for a disaster.
Trouble.
And now I understood a couple of things. That's gel makes sense, chewies make sense. You can look at the dates, a lot of people prefer, etc. I've seen some people even using chickpeas, etc. I don't know how much it makes sense or not. But other than that, suppose I'm planning a long run. Let's understand, say, a 3-hour long run, which is fairly relevant. If you're going for a marathon, you will be training for 3 hours for sure. Now for that, there are a couple of stages. One, of course, is pre-training, during and after. If we were to look at pre, during and after, how would you suggest where should be our food intervention before training, at what stage, and what should that include? Should it be only carbohydrate? Should it be a little more? And during training, of course, there are a couple of points you talked about, 30 grams, 60 grams, etc. And we can talk about that. But do you think there is a baseline where you can start from? And from an Indian context, we don't have access to almost everything, as well as our taste buds are different. And so we want to eat in a particular way. So how do I plan for this Sunday long run, or a mid long run, if not long run, for example?
Okay. So what I can give you is a framework.
Yeah.
And with that framework, you can do your own trial and errors and see what works for you.
Right.
So I was saying, I like to work from a very preventative approach. So a night before only, I will recommend people to start hydrating with electrolytes. So start well, so that you don't have to suffer anything during.
Right.
So as simple as whatever you prefer, your electrolyte strategy. There's so many brands available in the market today. You can opt for those, but start it. Start second half of the day before you race. Try it. Of course, you'll pee it off. You lose something. It's okay.
Yeah.
But at least you've started the effort of building on to something. So do that a night prior. We are Indians.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily need a big carb loading and all of those strategies. At least this is my opinion. We don't need 7 days or 5 days of that process. But I feel for a race, 48 hours are more than enough to sort of fuel your carbohydrate requirements and top them up. For a long run, dinner is more than enough. So choose a dinner that is light on your tummy and rich on carbs.
Okay.
Apni dal khichdi is the best option, I usually tell people. And rice is a part of most of our culture. So whether it's dal rice, khichdi, rasam rice, sambar rice, curd rice, whatever you prefer, have that.
Works.
All of that works. There are people who like pastas and stuff like that. If you're comfortable with it, have it.
But not before every Sunday long run, right?
Not necessary that you do it every single time.
Sure.
But I'm saying that whatever you use as a part of your dinner,
Okay.
because today pastas have also become a part of our
Yeah.
everyday lives, right? So if whatever is comfortable for you, try and choose something that's light and something you do normally.
Got it.
So those become a part of dinner and your hydration strategy. Next morning depends on when you wake up. So for example, if you're starting at 5 o'clock, you'll have people getting up at 3:30 a.m. and when you get up, you want to do something that's easy to digest.
Yeah.
Many people, when they get up, they want their chai and coffee, right? So that's a normal thing for them. Chai may have a lot of milk,
Yeah.
which is okay. Some people might find it difficult to digest that just before, but because it's chai and they want it, they have it. So that's different from what the scientific jargons might tell you, but because they want their chai,
They'll take it. Yeah.
they'll take it.
Yeah.
So chai, coffee is whatever you prefer, and then have something very light. So it can be as simple as a bread jam. It can be a peanut butter jam sandwich. It can be thoda sa oats with little yogurt. It can be little granola and yogurt.
Yeah.
Whatever you're comfortable with. This has happened so many times to me that before a marathon, I get calls suddenly, somebody gave me a number. मैं रेस में क्या करूँ, क्या खाऊँ?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's too late. जो आप नॉर्मली करते हो वही करो. और मतलब आई कैन नॉट, दिस इज द बेस्ट एडवाइस आई कैन गिव यू एट दिस पॉइंट. सो ईट समथिंग लाइट एंड यू हैव टू कीप ट्राइंग दीज स्ट्रैटेजीज टू सी व्हाट वर्क्स एंड ब्लेंड्स वेरी वेल फॉर यू. सो कीप दीज 4 or 5 options and try. People have boiled potato also, so you try whatever works. So you do that in the morning. Then when you start from there, every hour the guidelines say 30 to 60 grams of carbs per hour.
Yeah.
Right? Our typical gels give us anywhere between 25 grams on an average of carb. So that means 2 gels per hour, or at least 1 gel per hour. Now, some people find it very difficult to have so many gels, right? Even when you start, it's okay. But as you go ahead, you feel that throat becomes dry and now it makes you feel uncomfortable, all of that. So you'll need to have some strategies that go in. And the 4 major strategies that you need to look at, and you can decide what you prefer in all of this. One is fuel.
Yeah.
So you figure out where your carbs are coming from. They can come from a sports drink. They can come from an energy mix. You have powders also today. 250 ml you dilute and you can get that. They can come from your gels, chewies, gummies, whatever you call it. So that's your one fuel angle in there. Choose those products that have multiple transportable carbohydrates. By that I mean just don't have something that has only glucose.
Yeah.
Try and do maltodextrin, glucose, fructose. So you have different ways in which your body can absorb your carbohydrates. So that means more energy at once. Yeah. So try and choose something like that. So that's fuel. Next is your electrolytes. So again, if you're using a gel, you might want to use an electrol, like an ORS.
Yeah.
If you are having a sports drink, you might want to use a salt tablet.
Yeah.
So decide what is your strategy for electrols. So fuel, electrolytes, fluids. So you can't get away with that. So even if you have the gel, you need to sip some water over it, because otherwise it gets really uncomfortable eventually.
Yeah.
So have your gel, suck on it, and then sip some water over it. And 4th is use of caffeine. So I feel many people say that, I'm doing a full marathon and at 30 kilometers, I am so tired, my legs are heavy and I can barely make it. You make it because your mind is there, you have to finish. But can you sort of delay that fatigue? And like I was telling to you earlier, that your CNS fatigue is the first fatigue that hits you. Yeah. Then, body-based fatigueness. So I feel if 30 kilometers you're going to fatigue off, you should plan your caffeine accordingly. Caffeine takes 30 to 45 minutes to kick in, right? So 30 kilometer ke pehle 30 minutes, 45 minutes, try and see if you can take a caffeine tablet. Today you have salt and caffeine tablet ka combinations also available. So you can pop those in, whatever, 100 mg odd. Take those in, so at 30 kilometers they'll be available. So what you feel at 30, now you won't feel. And you'll automatically start thinking positive. Yeah. That I'm not fatiguing right now. The caffeine has worked for me. So that positive reinforcement is more than enough for you to get on for a little further. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And that has a massive difference on pushing and performance and all of that. So that's huge. The other thing you can also do is, if you know, like I said, if you know exactly when you get tired, you can accordingly plan your gels, you can accordingly plan your sports drink. So I'm going to keep it open ended, because
Yeah.
there's no one strategy that fits all. But I'd like to say, take care of your fuel, fluid, electrolyte, and use your caffeine wisely.
Sure.
Because if you know all of these, if you include all of these basis how you want to consume, matlab if you want to take a fluid in some form and tablet in the other, so you'll have to figure out what really works for you.
Yeah.
But if you get this right, then you're sorted for the
Yeah.
whole marathon.
Yeah. No, this is very comprehensive, and it makes a lot of sense. Keeping it open-ended also makes sense for them to play with it in that range
Exactly.
of what they think is right for them. And a few important points that I took away and I want to reiterate, that is that whatever you're going to do in the race, please try for a number of times in your training. You cannot just go and pop in a caffeine pill,
No.
or you find something in the race, so you pick up and you start to consume.
No.
It just doesn't help. Please avoid. Also, in the range, when you are in the training, it could be that you can start at the lower end. Over a period of time, you will see that your gut gets trained.
Correct.
Like when I start my cycle, I start with 25-30 gram
Yes.
an hour, and by the time I'm done with my training and I'm starting taper, I'm able to maybe sustain about 70 grams and still I'm not puking.
Yeah.
But if I started from 70 gram day one, I can't take it. The caffeine, and I have seen it in 2 marathons, what happened exactly at 32 kilometers, it was in my mind, like what you said. I knew, I was feeling, hey, I think at 32 kilometer, I am going to feel tired. This was in my mind because it had happened to me in Chicago once during my business school. And it happened both the times, in Chicago again and in Berlin. And I saw later in London, actually with caffeine, it started
Yeah.
to help me. And from the start only, I was like, no, I'm going to have caffeine, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
I moved to caffeinated gels.
Yeah.
And that helped. But I had trained, of course,
Correct.
during the training, so that helped. The point where you talked about electrolytes,
Yeah.
I know the sweat rates are different for
Yeah.
people, and this question starts to come in. You see the tablets that are available for electrolytes, and I really like the effervescent tablets.
Yes.
Especially chilled. They are 500 mg, 1000 and 1500. Some people are less sweaters than others. Do you suggest that there is a guideline for them to keep in mind, or they should see what works for them?
I think start with something as simple as an ORS.
Okay.
Is what I would recommend.
Sure.
As you go by, you'll start seeing how your body reacts, right? Whether it's salty sweaters are quite common. So you'll
Yeah.
start seeing a white ring around. So
Yeah.
you know that you're sweating too much and probably you're not sort of replenishing those enough.
Yeah.
And when that happens, then we're ready for a conversation of how many mgs of sodium, chloride,
need.
potassium do you really need.
Yeah.
But keep it generic as much as possible in terms of, even if you have a simple ORS, even if you start with basic sodium, potassium, electrolyte availability in tablets, in effervescent tablets, anything like that, that's good enough for you to begin off. And then when you start experiencing some issues, that's when we know we need to intervene, but we need to get to that point. Right, I feel that we need to make a big foundation, which includes all of those things in the list. And as you go by and as you start training, you'll realize things that your body can do, which you never realized before.
Yeah, yeah.
So when that starts happening, then we are in for another conversation altogether.
Awesome. Makes so much sense so far. Now, as we move to a stage when we are trying to build power, we are trying to build speed, and as our mileage is also higher, we are almost peaking, because right after we are going to taper. In this stage, I've seen a lot of people falling sick.
Yeah.
Because you need to get back to your next training session fairly quickly. At times you'll see on HRV scale as well, HRV goes down because of the training inflammations and stressors, and nutrition goes haywire.
Yeah.
I have seen and heard that certain supplements help you as well.
Yeah.
In certain conversations and research, there has been usage of curcumin. I've seen usage of beta-alanine. There has been ashwagandha being used, etc. Do you suggest a set of supplements that need to be accounted for one, better recovery or at this stage of training, or anything else? For example, I have also seen a lot of people just popping in multivitamins, right? Mega Men or XYZ, and I see by the bed. I have a friend, and I was visiting her, and I see that she always every night she's consuming. I'm like, is there a purpose? Do you know why are you consuming? She's like,
Yeah.
no, I should have it because
Yeah.
omega 3. This is all good. Do you think it is that way?
I think there are two questions in here. And the first question is, half the time I think it's a placebo effect.
Yeah.
So, if, like I said, right, if you believe strongly in something, it will work. Even if it's a sugar pill,
Yeah.
but you think this is going to work, it might
Yeah.
actually just work for you. So, in most cases, it can be a placebo effect. But to answer the question, there are various supplements that can work. First, let me talk about the recovery aspect of things, because if you are able to recover better, then you are ensured that your immunity is in good place and you're not going to fall sick. I mean, upper respiratory tract infections, etc., very common in runners.
Yeah.
Cough and all of that. So you want to ensure that you recover well.
Yeah.
That's most important. So for recovery, I think the base is a good diet. There is there's no other option to a good diet. But like I said, if you're deficient in certain vitamins and minerals, you'll have to supplement those. You'll have to get on the vitamin D protocol, B12 supplement, iron supplement, if you're deficient on those lines. If not, like you said, these other things have really come into being a lot more now. Vitamin C.
Yeah.
You know, it is so potent as an antioxidant and something that really helps in muscle recovery. So if you're somebody who's really suffering and chronically not recovering well, maybe that's something that you can consider. Of course, you have ashwagandha, but source it from the right place, and that can really help you because it's an adaptogen. So it's going to help you adapt to the load, to the intensity, to the stressor that you're experiencing, and can really help you as well. Curcumin, like I said, but I'm still a strong believer of put your haldi kesar in your doodh and then sleep at night because that will again make a lot of difference. Today you have globally you have curcumin in tablets and capsules available, and then everybody's sort of influenced on using those, but just go to your kitchen and you'll find half the things right there.
I know, and it's also in our food almost all the time.
All
honestly.
the time,
Yeah.
100%. And even no, I know that it's not the season right now, but avlas,
Yeah.
they are excellent. Like you take your avla and then just put it in a mixie. I know there will be fiber around, but it's okay. Just gulp it down, and you have your daily dose of vitamin C in there. Like watermelon, great. It's rich on citrulline. It's great in terms of recovery. You have pineapple and papaya. They have enzymes that can really work in healing of your muscles. So supplements, foods, you should know when to do what, and if you do all of this, it can really help you with recovery. So that's one angle. The second piece with respect to performance, like you said, when you talk about speed and strength and all of these things, beta alanine acts as a great lactic acid buffer. But people don't know that beta alanine is a training supplement. It's not a acute performance supplement. It takes 8 to 12 weeks for it to start acting, because beta alanine, once you take it, it sort of combines with another amino acid called histidine. Then it makes something called as carnosine. And then carnosine is the one that makes all the difference. So it's a long process. So doesn't happen overnight. So 8 to 12 weeks is what it takes. But even if you use it for 6 to 8 weeks during this block of, building your speed, hill runs, tempo runs, when you're focusing on speed, pace, all of that, it will make a huge difference. So 3,000 to 5,000 mg is a very rough range that I can give you. It can go higher, but you experience a lot of tingling, etc. And that can make you feel uncomfortable. So I try and suggest do a little bit do half a dose do half a dose post. So you get your daily dose in there, and you also get adapted to it. So if 3,000 mg once made you feel really like this, it won't make you feel like that a month from now. So that's a great supplement. The other supplement is arginine/citrulline/nitrates typically. And again, I like to say that a beetroot shot does the same thing. Because I'm a big beetroot fan. If you ever happen to meet a few athletes I consult, they'll tell you that the only thing she tells us is beetroot. Everywhere. But beetroots are excellent because of the nitrate content. And citrulline is the most potent form even nitrates for that matter, that help you dilate your blood vessels. So, more oxygen, more nutrients are reaching the cell, and more lactic acid, carbon dioxide is eliminated also very well. So, the fuel delivery and the removal of waste is also very nice. So, I think beetroot or nitrates could also become a very important part during this phase. And yeah, I think these two things become important. And I don't know if you want to quickly touch base on creatine.
I was just going to come to the mother of it.
Yeah, so I feel that, again, I mean, I'll start with saying that strength training is also, I'm not an expert in training, but
Sure.
just to say that strength training is very important as a part of training in a life of a runner. And 2 times a week, 3 times a week, whatever you can accumulate. But so why are you doing that? You're doing that because you want to ensure that your muscles are strong, your entire skeletal system is strong, and you also recover better with it, right? And creatine, this classic concept of using creatine only for people who go to the gym, or those who are into bodybuilding or weightlifting, and all of that is a classic concept that still is around. But I feel, especially if you're a vegan or vegetarian, a very low dose, 1 gram, 2 gram, done every day, will also really help in maintaining your muscle strength, and ensuring that you're recovering well enough, ensuring that you don't land up getting into injuries. So creatine becomes a very important supplement. You don't necessarily need to do, there's a loading phase and there's a maintenance phase, all that jazz you don't need. But some supply is very important to sort of keep your strength going and keep your recovery going.
Sure. And is this something that can be done through the entire training cycle, or should be done in a particular period of it?
I think you should do it in a particular period. So based on what you're working on. So for example, if you know that this phase you're working on strength and a little bit of speed, then it's a good time to do creatine. But when you're looking at aerobic endurance, where your focus is only building mileages and aerobic capacity, that time it won't help. So like I said, like, it's important to use your supplement basis the training you're doing, and the training objective should align with your nutrition strategy. And if that is done, then you're in for benefit. Because today Dr. Google tells us everything. It tells us creatine is good, this is good, that is good, all of that. But what we don't know is, when is it good, and how much should I take it, what product should I buy, which type should I buy, where do I go about buying these products? These questions it doesn't really answer.
True. I also wanted your attention on your book, which you have focused significantly around these products. We talked about it briefly earlier backstage. Do you want to talk about that book, and how should people access it? Because I think after we spoke, I spoke with someone outside, and I know she has read your book, and and she's our nutritionist, which is good. So I thought we should spend some time on it, and why it will be good to runners.
Yes, thank you. So the book is called Faster, Stronger, Higher, and it's a book on periodized nutrition strategies for the track and field athlete alone. It's a first of its kind book in our country, especially, and especially focused on track and field. So all the long distance runners who would be listening to this, there is one chapter for you, but it's a track and field book. So it includes everything from throws to sprints to jumps to middle distance running to mixed events, all of that. But it's divided into 3 parts. The first part speaks about the foundation of nutrition. So here is where you'll have a lot of information on macros, micros, and I've given it in such a way that if you want a calcium source, I've given you 10 sources with the milligrams that it contains for every serve. So you know exactly what to take and how much to take.
Right.
So that will be very informative for you to build your base. Then it goes into periodized nutrition strategies, where I've phased them into 4 training phases. So you have the general preparation phase, you have a specific preparation phase where you work on strength and speed, like you said, a pre-competition and a competition phase, so a taper phase, and then you go into the race. So I've sort of built it into that, and I've built within that also I've given you various options of training. So today if you're doing a long run, this is what you take pre, during, post. Today if you're doing a hill run, this is what you do pre, during, post. If you're doing a continued pace run, this is what you do pre, during, post. If it's a flexibility recovery session, this is what you do. So I've tried to give it to you in an easy to understand and practical manner, so that you just have to look at, where is my long run, okay, then this is pre, during and post. so something like that. And it ends with a chapter or a phase of special conditions. So if you're a female athlete, what are the considerations that you must have? If you're a vegetarian athlete, what are the conditions you must have? If you're training at altitude, what should you do? So those bits and pieces I've added towards the end. So
Awesome.
yeah.
And is it available online? Can people buy
It's
it on
available
Amazon?
on Amazon, yes.
Okay, awesome. We'll also provide the link in the show notes, and that will help people purchase. I think it will be super helpful, and I'm also going to get back to you after reading it with the complete feedback.
Yes.
I think you and I can keep going all night.
That is true.
And with your permission, we'll try to do maybe a series that will help people understand more about nutrition. Also, after this episode, we'll seek feedback of what they want to hear more of.
Yeah.
And then we can cover in the subsequent visits. For today, I think this is more than enough. And thank you so much for so sufficiently putting it all together and spending time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed talking to you. It doesn't feel like a official podcast.
Yeah.
It just feels like a conversation we are having. So I've loved speaking to you, and I really hope that the conversation we've had makes some difference to people who are listening. And please come back with any feedback you have, and then we can come and build some topics that really make any significant difference to their lives.
Awesome. Thank you so much.